and welcome to my channel. My name is Janelle and I'm a nurse medical writer for the past 6 years. I help nurses and healthcare workers who are burnt out leave the bedside and become successful medical writers. So today I'm here to talk to you about top 5 mistakes nurses make when writing. This is part 2 to part 1, so like, subscribe, and follow if you guys are interested about this topic. Okay guys, so the first top mistake I see for my students that I mentor when they first start writing is that they use way too many run-on sentences. Way too many run-on sentences. And I totally get it because we have a lot of information that we want to tell the reader, but it ends up just sucking the soul out of the reader, that they're on this roller coaster of a sentence that never seems like it's going to stop and they don't even quite know what the point of it is. And they just get lost in the sauce with it. I understand that we have a lot of information that we want to tell and that we want to make sure that our target audience knows. And we're also super passionate, right? This is healthcare, we're nurses, we're clinical experts, and we just want to chat about it. But that doesn't mean that we should be creating deliverables that aren't attainable for our target audience. Remember, it's all about that target, right? Who is reading? And can they understand what we're writing? Because if we're writing something and the target audience doesn't get it, or they just click out of it, or they're not reading it, then what's the point of writing it? So we really need to make sure that our sentences are short, they're direct and to the point, that we're not burying those leads, and we don't have a ton of independent clauses or semicolons or super long sentences in general. Did you guys know that there's actually a recommended word count for sentences when we're writing blogs or any other type of deliverable? And in the medical writing industry, we actually want to keep it under that specific word count per sentences. So even if it's not a grammatically incorrect run-on sentence, if it's a super long sentence and you go past that amount of words per sentence, it's still considered way too long for medical writing, which is what I see on and on over and over again. So if you guys want to know that specific word count or very specific tips, you can check out my writing course at willowbarkwriting.com. The second top mistake nurses make when they start to write is getting super defensive over edits. I totally understand this one. I think I was really defensive over edits for my first job, and I feel so bad for my first editor. I think that it is second nature for us to want to defend ourselves in our work and our content, especially at the bedside when we may be questioned for our actions and we're just trying to take care of the patients, and we have all these reasons for why we made that care plan and we took the time to make those interventions what they were. But writing isn't really like that. So a lot of the time we could be writing totally grammatically correct and all the information could be correct, but maybe we're not writing for the correct tone, or we're straying from the style guide, or maybe the research isn't quite up to the par of the editorial team and it needs to be rewritten. So it doesn't mean that you're a bad writer or that everything's wrong. It just means it was wrong for that client, and at the end of the day, they're the ones paying you. So you need to make sure that you're okay with edits, because first of all, it's nothing personal, right? They're just trying to do their job and you're just trying to do your job. And you need to make sure that you're okay with rewriting your work. Editors are there to make your work stronger. They polish your work, they make it better for the internet. And frankly, I'm happy that they're editing my content and cutting it when it needs to be cut and telling me that's bad, because I don't want to put bad content out, especially content that is tied to my name. I want to put out flawless pieces of content every single time. So instead of thinking about it being you versus your editor and you guys being on opposite teams, think of it as them really helping you out and being on your team and rooting for you and helping you create the best content that you can in a collaborative way instead of that competitiveness again. So that's another huge mistake I see nurse writers doing. The fourth top mistake I see nurse writers making when they first start out is way too many bullets. Just listing thing after thing after thing after thing. It's true. Blogs do love bullets, and it's a way for us to break up the content. A lot of the time, our brains will see one giant paragraph or like a whole page of text, and we just don't want to deal with it. Our brain shut down. I don't know about you, but I kind of start skimming, or maybe I'll click out and I'm like, I just don't want to read this. Like, it's just too much for me. So that's why bullets and shorter sentences and shorter paragraphs in particular are really good for this type of thing. But I find that nurse writers that are just starting out will have bullets that are like 10, 15 bullets long, and that's way too long. You really want to condense it to, just like how there's a certain number in sentences, there's a certain recommended number for bullets as well. If you're just putting a ton of bullets, you kind of look a little bit lazy, like you weren't in it enough to figure out what needs to be put in, what needs to not be put in, and also what can be explained with a sentence and what should be explained with a bullet. So again, it looks like an unfinished draft if you just have a whole line of bullets. It's really up to you to figure out the best format that breaks up that text, but also doesn't look like a to-do list that you're just like listing like your grocery list out for your reader. So that's another balance that you have to strike as a new medical writer that I see a lot of nurses struggling with. Another mistake new nurse writers make is using the same words over and over again. I know I used to do this. I think that once we find a favorite word or a go-to word that's just super easy for us to say, our brains just want us to put it in over and over and over again. And we might not even realize that we're doing it until we read it back, which is why it's so paramount for us to read back what we're writing. I find that phrases like such as is like repeating phrase for a lot of nurses because we're used to that academic tone. And it could be easier or something more simple than such as. A lot of the time it's paramount or important, something like that. And what happens is if we use the same word over and over again, it starts to sound really repetitive in our writing, and it might drive our reader away. And they might start concentrating on the fact that that word keeps popping up instead of concentrating on what the blog or deliverable is about. One easy way to counteract this is just to search your paper for specific words and see how many times you've used them, or just really pay attention when you're going back and doing an edit. In the writing course I provide, I actually do a writing checklist for you guys and an editing checklist to make it really easy for you to edit your own work. And one of the checks is going back and looking for redundant phrases and words. I think that the more you write, the more you'll find word variability comes to the top of your mind. And if you're really stuck with that, just start searching for synonyms of certain words and start figuring out how you can rephrase those sentences that you just seem to go back to time and time again. There's some words that we're just more comfortable with. A lot of the time when we're speaking, there's words that come to my mind before other words, and writing's the same exact way. We just have to make sure that we're not falling into that trap every single time and that our tone matches the target audience, the deliverable, as well as the client. So that's just a final check that can really elevate your writing. Another top mistake that I see nurse writers making when they're starting out is sounding really boring. I think we're used to sounding very clinical. I think we also have to defend ourselves as nurses a lot of the time because we're not prescribers. So I think that we want to come off incredibly intelligent, which we definitely are, but it's something that we want to convey about ourselves. And I think it's really important to remember that writing is not about ourselves, it's about our target audience and our client. So it does not matter how you are coming off in the piece, it matters how the piece is coming off to the person buying it and the person reading it. So it's really good if you can look back and see from a different perspective of if this is an actually boring piece. And by boring, I just mean it drones on and on. There's no livelihood to it. It has no questions in it. It is just matter of fact. It reads like a textbook. It's walls of text or bullets that are just forever long. There seems to be no flow or cadence or musicality to the words. It's robotic sounding. It kind of sounds like a scratching record when you read it. It just kind of like hurts your brain or your ears. All of that makes for a really boring article. So we talk a lot about researching and editing, but we don't talk about the musicality of pieces, and that's what keeps your reader going too. So we want to make sure that we're definitely playing to that and we're creating engaging pieces. So making sure that the intro is talking directly to the reader, the conclusion draws them in and wraps up any loose ends, that we're not just writing a clinical document or a nursing note, and that we're remembering that we're not at the bedside in this clinical moment. Now we're doing a different role, because it will lead to very boring documents that people will not want to read. Even clinicians, even people that are writing CROs in that space, so very technical documents, they're still people. They don't want to be bored. Even the smartest of smart people want an engaging document for them. So if you can kind of spice that personality up, put it in there, you'll be far better than your peers who are still struggling for that. And I think that that is something that will take time again. But if you can just kind of like loosey-goosey yourself up and get used to the fact that you're talking more conversationally and you don't have to defend your intelligence, like we all know that you're smart. You do not have to defend it in that way. It gets a lot easier. So that's another top tip or a top mistake that I see nurse writers make. So this is video 2 of 1. Subscribe, like, and follow if you're curious about the other one. And if you're a nurse or healthcare worker looking to leave the bedside, or you're curious about remote work as a medical writer, check out my resources at willowbarkwriting.com. I have the Writing Academy, a super comprehensive course to support you every step of the way. Bye!